Riverside PD was like my home.
There wasn't very many bad guys that got away from them.
Angela Parks came as a deputy sheriff to the jail.
She was an outstanding recruit.
Just such a good-hearted person and just fun, and everybody liked her.
I was more in love with her than I was with anybody in my life.
There was a homicide in the parking lot of a bar.
The deputies learned that George Hernandez was communicating with the Mexican Mafia.
We knew what it was. It was a hit.
He had more power than we first knew about.
There are a lot of good cops out there that just roll up on shit, and Johnny was one of those guys.
You know, something is kind of going on.
Don't get involved with this man.
Something is not quite right.
Who's who in this game here?
She was a mother and a deputy sheriff. Her assignment? A guard at the county jail, where she met one of the inmates, a gangster charged with murder.
You shoot somebody 5 times at close range, you're dealing with a pretty dangerous guy.
The cop, the killer, and their clandestine connection. In Southern California, east of Los Angeles, is the suburban city of Riverside, a place Johnnie Porchè called home.
One thing I do remember as a child, I remember someone breaking into our house. And that feeling of like, you've been pretty much violated. And that's the first time I ever had a really interaction with law enforcement. I felt protected, and my mom met my stepfather, Ron.
My mom got all dressed up, and she looked beautiful, and we never saw my mom really get like dressed for a date, So it was all very exciting.
I remember this guy coming in, he's just a big dude, 6'4", He was in good shape. I don't want to tell him that, but he was in good shape.
So when we saw Ron come in with his uniform, it was like, holy moly, and Johnny's eyes just were, they just went, and they got big. His expression just changed to this, in awe. He just was. He was always in awe.
It was great, to see his interest in something like that, and it made him smile and be happy. That was perfect for me.
That was neat to me, because I knew with him around we'd be safe.
Poor Uncle Sam. That was my thought.
He was all excited about it, and we were excited for him.
I was very proud of him, that he was doing something as selfless as joining the military.
The military was something I needed to do, but I knew I had a goal. I could play G.I. Joe all day long, but my real love was law enforcement.
Porchè returned stateside and soon joined the Riverside Police Force.
Everyone I knew, my mom worked there, my dad worked homicide. To be a cop in the city of Riverside is where I grew up at. This was my lifelong dream.
And it wasn't long before Johnny met the woman of his dreams.
A buddy of mine was dating this girl who's in the academy, and that's the first time I ever met Angela Parks. My buddy's girlfriend was in the academy with Angela, and I ended up sitting right next to her. And something about this girl, she commanded the room.
She was stunning, actually, and just such a good-hearted person and just fun, and everybody liked her, and she's one of these people that you walk in a room, everyone talked to.
My mom called and said, oh my gosh, he's found somebody. I think that she's, she's making Johnny smile. When I met Angela, I knew exactly why. Angela was that angel.
Everyone loved Angela. And she'd walk in a room and she'd make sure the person way in the back room was doing okay. She was just that girl.
But life for Angela Parks had never been easy. Born to a U.S. Army sergeant and a South Korean mother, Parks would undergo 2 early traumas.
Angela had to grow up real fast. Her parents divorced when she was 15. We don't know that much about her mom or where she went, but she was very close with her dad. And then he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She cared for him, and then he passed away. When you're 15 years old, you should be in high school, going to proms and dating, not having to take jobs as a waitress and dropping out of high school when you're 16, as Angela did.
Angela Parks later had a son and then decided to become a police officer.
Angela graduated from Riverside Sheriff's Academy.
She was an outstanding recruit, very motivated, very sharp, volunteered for assignments, and very well involved with the class and their activities and everything you look for a role model recruit in the academy.
When you graduate, you have to do a certain amount of years in the jail before you go out in the street. She was assigned to the county jail, Robert Presley Detention Center.
Angela Parks came as a deputy sheriff to the jail, her first experience with being on duty. To me, she stood out because she had a nose for the job and knew what was going on.
I gave her so much credit because the job she was doing, the shift she was working, when everybody's partying, she was working the midnight shift.
Angela was a fast tracker. Within 2 years, she was ready to go on patrol. She was loved by everybody in the jail. I mean, this woman was squared away.
I got a phone call at home basically saying that there was a homicide in the parking lot of a bar here in Riverside, in the south end near the Arlanza area. Steve Shumway was the case agent on it.
I mostly dealt with Crips and Bloods. Arlanza is a Hispanic community. We had witnesses that identified the car. We had no witnesses that could identify anybody other than Hispanic gang members.
It was a pretty gruesome scene. He was lying on his back in the parking lot of Jack's Bar, and he'd been shot at very close range. He was shot multiple times in the head, in the torso. It was very deliberate. We knew what it was. It was a hit.
We needed to identify the car. It was a Chevy Malibu, blue. It had rims. I mean, it was like driving a car around saying, "Arrest me."
The gang that was involved in this incident was a gang called Arlanza 13. I grew up with a lot of the Arlanza gang members, and then once I became a police officer, I was running into a lot of these guys that I went to school with that became Arlanza gang members.
Jimmy said, "Hey, this guy, George Hernandez, drove a Chevy Malibu."
We knew that he wasn't just your typical average gang member. He was higher up on the hierarchy.
We had numerous witnesses, and some identified that he was in the bar, but a lot of them couldn't identify that he was the actual shooter.
Through our investigation, we were able to learn that he was directed by members of the Mexican Mafia to rid the Arlanza gang of George Ortiz for being a rat, cooperating with police.
He called Jorge Ortiz over to his car and shot him 5 times. After that, I put out a wanted on George Hernandez. Terry Ellison, he was an officer, really good cop. He was looking for a grand theft auto suspect in a motel room over on Magnolia who had stayed there like a day before. George happened to be in that room. So he went up and knocked, and then George comes out, jumps from the 2nd story down to the parking lot, and Terry gives chase. They arrest him. Searched the room. In there were 2 guns, 2 9mm, and a 1/4 pound of methamphetamine. One of those guns matched up to the bullets that were taken out of George Ortiz's head. George Hernandez was more intelligent than your average criminal. He went to parochial school.
He didn't come from that typical broken home and wasn't around gang members his whole life. He did well in school. He was well liked by his teachers. But something changed once he reached his teenage years because he was all about Arlanza and the Arlanza gang.
He had been an extremely violent individual. There were robberies, numerous shootings, and incredibly violent behavior.
He was booked into the local jail in Riverside, the Robert Presley Detention Center.
George Hernandez is sitting in an interview room. I tried to talk to him about what happened, about the guns and the dope that were found in his room. And I never forget, he got this smirk on his face, and I just knew he wasn't going to talk to me. George Hernandez was very intelligent, a very sophisticated gangbanger, so he invoked his rights. And I said, I want you to know, you've been seen at a bar, you've been seen at a murder scene, your car, it's all leading to you. And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I go, what about the dope? What about the guns? He goes, it's not mine. George Hernandez says, I'm not going to talk to you. I want a lawyer. I said, okay, George, that's fine. But, this is what we have, and I'm going to book you for murder.
Early on in my career, even in training, I was involved in a couple pursuits, fights.
He would make stops. He would pull people over. He'd get in vehicle chases. How can you get in that many vehicle chases? I mean, I can tell you how many times in my career, and it wouldn't be that many, but he had them all in 1 week.
Things would just fall in his lap. He'd park somewhere quiet and try not to get involved in anything. Sure enough, the building next to him is getting burglarized, and there's 4 guys on the roof.
My commander come to me and said, listen, you're getting too much shit.
He never shied away from anything. Did I have chats with Johnny? Yes. Yes, I did.
About 12:24 in the afternoon on a Sunday. Today's weird. It's a weird day. I get a call advising that there's a subject down due to a stabbing.
2R43.
I believe we've got the victim is going to be of a stabbing. I believe our suspect's still 97 there.
Where's the original victim at?
They ran from the 48 address to the neighbors across the street.
1040.
Can you tell me what he's wearing at all, sir?
He's wearing no shirt. It looks like blue jeans, no shoes. He's crouching in his driveway, and he's got 2 knives in his hand.
I look over to the right, and I see this guy crouched down in his driveway, and he has these 2 knives in his hands.
Unbelievable.
Okay.
Oh, there's a policeman.
Okay.
And he's licking the blood off these knives. And he's laughing like something's really funny. He's not there, like something's not right. This has gone sideways.
The guy's getting up. The guy's getting up and approaching the cop. Okay, he's approaching the cop. It doesn't look good.
He takes the knife and cuts his face wide open.
The officer just unloaded on him. The cop shot him. He approached him. And he wouldn't stop.
Okay, sir.
The guy just kept on coming right at him. And the officer warned him 3 or 4 or 5 times to stop. And he just come right at him. Just came right at him.
The guy hit the ground and he wasn't dead. You'd think 5 rounds from a .40 caliber handgun would end it, and it didn't. He was still trying to stab at me with part of his head missing. While on the ground, he had the 2 knives in his hand, and he was still trying to stab me, but he wasn't getting up because of the rounds that hit him in his head and his face. I heard the front door open, so I swing my handgun to the front door. It's his 3-year-old son who had just witnessed the whole thing. And that was tough for me because I remember thinking that, like, man, just take this guy away from his kid.
I got a call from, I believe, Sergeant Johnny Romo, a friend of mine, who was at the scene. And he told me that Johnny was just involved in a officer-involved shooting, and that, come on down there and see him. He could use some support.
I think he was calm. He was crying, and he said, I feel badly. I feel really badly about this. And I think it was because he said, that guy has mom.
When I got back to work, I was suffering from some really bad nightmares. To the point where I'd gone 4 days without sleeping. Started drinking a lot. It was just kind of playing with my psyche a little bit, and I started seeing things. I could see someone walking through my backyard. He walked by my kitchen window and then walked towards the side of the gate. It was the guy I killed.
After his shooting, he was just having a lot of problems, not wanting to be alone, and at that point, I just felt like he was in crisis.
During this difficult time, Porche finds solace in the relationship. Angela and Johnny grew very close. And soon, Angela Parks became the star in the lives of Porche and his family.
She made it easy to fall in love with her because she was so generous with who she was.
We just wanted to smother her with kisses and tell her, come on in.
She became a daughter. She would come around the house. We'd watch TV, we'd watch shows, we'd get together. We were very fortunate to have her in our lives. Gina thought of her as a sister and asked her to be in her wedding.
I just couldn't be more excited. Johnny was excited, and the first thing he said was, I am not walking with anybody unless it's Angela.
We were both in the wedding. We've been together about 3 years at the time.
Congratulations, cheers.
I'll be short. I'm gonna try to make Jen's eyelashes fall off.
I loved that Angela loved my brother. I loved the fact that his eyes lit up, and my family felt the same way.
She was what every man would want in a woman. I remember dancing on the dance floor, and Angela kept saying, when are you gonna ask me? When are you gonna ask me? I think that was the first time I thought, I'm gonna get married.
Soon after his sister's wedding, Johnnie Porchè began planning a bright future with Angela Parks.
We decided let's build a house together, and we went to the dirt lot. It was still a foundation, and I proposed to her on the lot, but because how we used to joke and kid, I got her this ring. I think it cost me like $4, and she cried like I gave her the biggest ring ever. She was like, come here, baby, we're good, you know? So to me, that was huge, and of course, I had a 4-carat diamond ring in my back pocket that I pretty much used my whole savings on.
He came to me and said, I think this is somebody that I want to marry. I know it, you know, she's the best thing. And we're like, yeah, yes it is. She called us. She was saying, we're getting married. Johnny asked me, we're getting engaged. And so Angela was excited to be part of the family. She was loving her job. Johnny was loving his. He's so happy, she's so happy, and everything was good. But within probably about a month, he was saying that she was already starting to act very weird.
My daughter's wedding was in October. At the time, everything seemed fine with Angela. She was in the wedding party, dancing, having a good time. Everything was good. We had no idea anything was going on. In December, Christmas time, Johnny gave her an engagement ring. She had no hesitations at the time, so it didn't seem like there was a problem then. And everything seemed fine at that point. She seemed like normal Angela. She'd come by the house 2 or 3 times a week. I would say beginning of January, after the first week, that's when she started pulling away.
Even with all that good stuff being said about Angela, there was some stuff that was kind of shady too. We were building a house. We had to go by periodically and do scheduled checks of the house and see the progression. And she didn't want to go anymore. It was weird. She didn't want the house, she didn't want to go. Everything was really strange.
As much as I loved Angela and as much as I wanted to accept her into the fold 110,000%, there were things that kind of went, that's a little odd.
She had a son who was living with her ex, but would never come to visit. It went weeks and weeks and months without her seeing her kid, and I thought, yo, where's your kid at?
With her son Pablo, it just seemed like she didn't want to bring Pablo around for Christmas vacation or to visit my mom and Ron, and he wasn't there to even experience us as a family.
Johnny told me that her son was with the boy's father in Orange County and that he didn't even have a permanent place to live, that he was one of those folks that moved from couch to couch to couch. And at one point, he even said that he had a felony warrant. And yet, this woman who has a great job, benefits, she owned a home at that point, she had more than enough to share with a child.
The Angela, the loving person, was not the same girl that was upset with my brother for pushing the Pablo situation.
My son looks like his dad, but with a lot of my features. He reminds me of you a little bit. On your question you asked me about my man, to answer that, I hate him. I've been living the last 2 months in hell, and as far as I'm concerned, we're done. No sex, no feelings, nada. That's where I need you to take care of me. You think you can handle that?
I just can't wait to get the fuck out of here. I can only take this shit so long. Believe me, babe, I want you. You have no idea how much.
Little did Angela know that one letter to Hernandez was all he needed to start his seduction.
Through George Hernandez's mail at the Robert Presley Detention Center, the deputies learned that George Hernandez was communicating with documented members of the Mexican Mafia, that he had more power than we first knew about. All Southern California Sureño Hispanic gangs align themselves with the Mexican Mafia, so when they go to prison, the members of Arlanza 13 will be considered soldiers of the Mexican Mafia. We also learned through the deputies at the jail that George Hernandez was actually running his particular area of the jail, which means that he had a lot of respect from the other gang members and the other inmates at the jail.
Just 2 months after her engagement, Angela Parks appeared to transform into a totally different person.
Beginning of February, I saw a big change in her. Now she's wearing low-cut shirts and she's dressing in dark colors. And I'm noticing that she's going shopping and coming back home and buying me more like Corona or Budweiser t-shirts. And I'm like, wait a second, like this is what gangsters wear.
I looked back and I saw that personality, the ups and downs, even the way she looked. You know, she went from being very pretty to almost looking thuggish. Her skin was changing. She wanted her hair different, but I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe it's just Johnny, but no, then I realized, wow. And then toward the end, she wanted nothing to do with him. She said, I'm not attracted to him anymore.
She would never call, she would never come by. Those 2 or 3 times a week became zero. Face was breaking out, she lost a lot of weight. We asked Johnny, what's with Angela? What's going on? He goes, I don't know, we're having problems. And I remember Johnny calling Janine a lot.
I said, Johnny's probably cold feet. I said, you know, she's been on her own since she was 16. But then he says, you know, something's up. And he goes, I don't know what it is. She's picking fights with me. She's not wanting to be close to me. As he started saying, something's weird, something's odd, then Ron says, you know, something is not quite right.
I love you, baby. Yours forever.
Some people say a white Suburban took off right before the incident with this guy and girl in it, saying something like, we got to get out of here. That was me. Now I need to find a girl to put with me. They said they can't identify the girl. The murder took place on 7/26/04 at 10:30 p.m. I left at 10:10.
Building the case against George Hernandez, Detective Shumway expanded his investigation of the gangster into his day-to-day activities.
In further investigating George Hernandez, I was listening to his phone calls and monitoring his jail visits. So I'm taking notes, copious notes, of when I'm listening to the calls. He was continuing his criminal enterprise, trying to manipulate people to do errands for him. I can remember phone numbers, so I would take those numbers down. And I'd say, okay, this is so-and-so. Who's who in this game here? George had numerous people he talked to. He would say, I want you to contact so-and-so, check on this person, check on this thing. Some were in code about, narcotics. This girl named Sandra Lopez came up. She was intelligent. She said, I have a 4-year-old son. She wasn't like the other women that George was talking to on the phone. He talks to her on several occasions. She just immersed herself into George Hernandez's business. And I was concerned for her son. I was concerned that George Hernandez was going to get her involved in something that she couldn't get out of. So I call Sandra Lopez and identify myself.
Hello?
Hello, Sandra?
Yeah?
Yeah, my name is Steve Shumway. I'm Detective Riverside Police.
I tell her I'm investigating the murder and George Hernandez is the suspect. And I say, I've listened to numerous phone calls that you have been conversing with George Hernandez. I want you to know that he is going to ask you to do things that are going to get you into trouble.
If he asks you to do something that's going to be illegal, then you're going to have to be prepared to suffer the consequences.
Oh, believe me, I'm not looking to get in any kind of trouble or anything like that.
As I said, you have a 4-year-old little boy. You sound like a decent human being. Don't get involved with this man.
By the way, can you call my boy Jonathan? Tell him you're my girlfriend and for him to give you little L's number. Then call and ask for Jose. He's my little prodigy. I trust him with everything. Make sure the phones you use are safe.
Do I need to worry about getting caught up in any of your stuff? If I do, please let me know so I can be prepared. Anyway, I miss you, Daddy. Please write me more.
As time passed, Johnny and his family noticed more examples of Angela Parks' unusual behavior.
A lot of stuff was going down that were kind of suspicious. I'd go by the jail while she was working the jail, and they'll have no cars on the street anywhere around the jail except her car, and the window will be half down at 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember one time I was working and I pulled up to her car and I rolled the windows up. I was like, what is she doing? I went home and I talked to her about it. She says, oh, I left the window down, no big deal.
Nice, beautiful, closer picture. There were some things that just didn't make me feel right. One specific detail about my wedding and Angela, there were times that Angela was not around. One of my girlfriends says, she's outside on the phone. And that was odd because we didn't know, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is she okay? But I suspected that something more was going on.
We saw her, Angela, on a Saturday at a local restaurant.
Me and Janine were walking up to the front doors, just going to get some dessert and coffee. And Angela was walking out, and she was walking out with like 3 or 4 guys.
She was looking very weird. She had kind of like a gangster girl clothes, but the people she was with.
Their appearance showed that they were dressed and acted like they were gangsters.
They were gangster looking. They had tattoos.
A lot of people have tattoos, but the type of tattoos, the type of clothing, the type of mad dogging that we were getting from them.
But you could tell that they were very weirded about us because they could tell. They knew that we were cops.
They looked like they were somebody she shouldn't have been hanging out with, being that she was in law enforcement, being that she was a deputy.
All they wanted to do was get out of there, and all Angela wanted them to do was get out of there.
She started freaking out, couldn't talk fast enough, trying to explain who we were. She said goodbye to them, they walked off. We walked in, Angela goes, I want to come with you, I want to come with you. So she came in, obviously she's trying to smooth things over.
And she made some excuse that it was an old-time friend. She hadn't just run into him.
Oh, they're just old friends, she told us. I just knew him from way back when. I ran into him. And I go, Angela, you can't do that, Angela. You're a deputy. You can't be hanging out with these people. These guys for sure were gangsters. There's no doubt in my mind.
She was making excuses, and I was like, you need to be smarter than that. Don't do that. Don't ruin your career this way. Had no idea what was going on.
That was like 3 or 4 days before this whole thing blew up.
We weren't intimate for a couple months. I tried to do, I think, what I could do to make her to come back. We went to Palm Springs for the weekend, and I remember her getting up and going to the bathroom, taking her cell phone in the bathroom. I'm like, I know what that means. Basically, she doesn't want the phone be left around if someone texts or calls. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she's dating someone else.
Johnnie became suspicious that she was cheating on him. He had bought her this big, beautiful ring, and she didn't want to wear it.
I remember one night in Palm Springs, her basically laying there and started crying. She's like, I don't want this. But I'm like, you're my fiancée, like, what's up? I thought she was fucking around on me with another officer.
It's March 15th, 2005, Johnny's birthday, one that he would never forget. In the house he shared with Angela Parks, Porche woke up to the beginning of the end of their relationship.
She comes home from work like any other morning, and she starts kissing me when I'm sleeping. She's like, listen, it's your birthday. I'm sorry I've been off. Tonight we're gonna make love. We're gonna have a great night. So I thought, man, Angela's back. She's back. She tells me she's gonna get her nails done with her girlfriend. At the time we had 3 vehicles. We had my vehicle, her vehicle, and a truck we owned together. So she's getting ready to leave. She was getting in a Honda. I said, no, I'm gonna get the Honda washed, take the Cadillac. She didn't want to. She's adamant about me not taking the car, the Honda. So I was even more adamant about taking the car. So she kind of gave up and left with her girlfriend. And I'm like on a traffic stop. I'm going through everything. I'm pulling all this stuff out. And I come across these letters talking about a murder. They needed to move a weapon. They needed to move a vehicle. But I thought to myself, well, why does she have these letters? She needs to turn these in because she's gonna get in trouble because it's evidence. And I start reading it, and it talks about how they want this person killed. Whoever wrote the letter was writing it to her.
Had Hernandez actually convinced Angela, a sheriff deputy sworn to uphold the law, to coordinate a hit on 2 innocent people?
It says these people need to take a dirt nap. ASAP. And it listed like 3 or 4 people with addresses. And I recognized like 2 of the people because I interviewed those people on that homicide, the George Hernandez homicide.
These letters said, I want this witness killed ASAP, and I want the other witness killed the next day. There's a phone number that George Hernandez calls hundreds of times.
He looks up at me, he says, what's Angela's cell phone number?
Johnny started giving it to him. Steve was able to finish like the last 4 numbers of the cell phone.
And he drops the paper. Oh my God.
This is unbelievable. I'm going, I know who Sandra Lopez is now. I mean, I don't know how is it, I'm trying to process how she would be involved with George Hernandez.
Angela's bad. Like, Angela Parks, my fiance, is bad.
And Johnny started actually freaking out, and he's walking in the other room screaming, no, no, say it ain't true. And Steve's like crying. You know, all this time he's listening to a phone call and it was Johnny's girlfriend. So he feels bad for Johnny, and Johnny's freaking out because he just finds out his girlfriend is trying to help a murderer kill some people.
I couldn't believe that this had just happened. My life just took this turn. And I remember Steve saying, this is gonna be big. You need to stay away from her. And all I wanted to get was answers. And I was like, fuck that, I'm leaving, I'm going home.
He wanted to go and get his belongings and get the keys to his car and get one of his vehicles because he was leaving. He wasn't gonna be staying at the house. I said, if she's home, just go in there, don't say anything to her. I knew that Steve Shumway and the robbery homicide unit was preparing a search warrant for their house. So I said, you don't wanna screw up anything with their investigation. Let's just get your stuff and get out of there.
I remember getting to the house, getting all of my possessions together, my weapons. She ends up walking in. She says, Johnny, like, what's going on? I've been trying to call you all day. And I looked at her and I go, I don't know, Sandra, why don't you tell me? When I said that, her leg literally gave out. Like, she fell to one knee and she was pulling my pants. Like, no, it's not me, it's my sister Melinda, it's not me, I'm trying to help her and get her out of trouble. And I said, look outside. We had a cop on each side of the street. I said, you're fucked. I go to her purse, I get her gun out, and I took the magazine out, and I told her, if I was you, I'd take care of business. Right as this happens, Jimmy Simons walks in and says, Johnny, let's go.
It's a shitstorm. Immediately, I start writing search warrants for Angela Parks' home, Angela Parks' locker, and George Hernandez's jail cell.
Me and Steve went down to the jail. The jail said, we're gonna clear his cell right now. We're gonna do a search of his cell. Come on down here and you can go through the contents. So they brought the box to the sergeant's office with all of the belongings from in there. There was pictures of Angela that he had drawn. And Steve's passing me stuff, and he's looking at it, passing me. Well, one of the things he passed me was a picture of a little boy, 7, 8, 9 years old. And I go, that's Pablo. And he wouldn't have known that, so it was good I was there, because he would have just bypassed it and not even taken it. So Pablo's picture, which is Angelo's son, is in George Hernandez's cell. And he freaked out. So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So she's passing her own son's picture to a murderer. And that's how far in she was.
I showed up to interview her about the letters. I advised her of her rights.
You know why you're here?
I don't understand the solicitation of murder, Steve. I
Okay.
really don't.
And this is, okay, you're under arrest for a bunch of charges. You're under arrest for, right now, 2 counts to solicit murder.
She said this was all just a fantasy. It was never gonna happen. I never made a phone call.
I'm just, like I said, I'm baffled about this solicitation thing. I don't understand that.
What do you write to him in the letters? I mean, what kind of stuff do you write to him? If you said you do write them letters?
Yeah, I've written a couple letters, and...
How many do you know?
Maybe like 5.
Okay.
I don't know if she was in denial or just kind of blasé, like, this is all a misunderstanding.
I don't know, it's kind of like it was a forbidden thing, you know what I mean? It's not... Believe me, I obviously know he has he's not gonna have any life outside of a jail, so why would I even consider, you know what I mean?
She wanted to get back with Johnny. They wanted to move out and start a new life, and it was like, let's just pretend like this thing never happened.
On the 5 letters, were they all like sexual? I mean, just like a fantasy letter, or what was it that you?
Yeah, a lot of it was. I mean, most of it was. Like I said, I'm not gonna lie. I know that. I mean, I'm just so embarrassed right now, beyond belief.
I saw her on the camera when they were interviewing her. She seemed bothered, like she was bothered that she was down there and she had better things to do. Through the whole interview, she was kind of being sarcastic to Shumway.
As far as what the letters, what I mean, were they short letters, little notes, or what?
No, I mean, I can see him right there.
Right. But some of the letters say when you get out, like you're gonna hook up.
Yeah,
with
but
them.
he's not gonna get out. I know that. I'm not that stupid. I didn't fall off the turnpike yesterday.
I don't know, her face was just very blank, you know, kind of sarcastic, kind of you expect a gangster to do type thing where she's smirking, sitting back in her chair.
I don't know if it was because she was using drugs and how clouded and jaded her mind was, but she just had no clue of how much trouble she was in.
Has he ever asked you to bring dope in?
No.
Tony?
No.
Or
No, I absolutely no.
But didn't he ask you? Didn't he ask you one time? You said you left your window down and she was supposed to put something in your car.
You know, a lot of stuff was going down that was kind of suspicious. Now I know what she was doing. You know, her gang buddies would come up and drop drugs in the car, weapons in the car, and she'd go back to her car, and as a deputy, as a cop, they're not gonna pat her down. They're not gonna search her. She doesn't walk through any type of metal detector. So she'd get the drugs, the guns, whatever it is she was getting, she'd bring it right back into the jail. And she was doing this every single day. She was letting other gang members use our vehicle and to do certain crimes. To be a part of drive-bys, to pick up drugs, and this is my vehicle. My name's on the title.
What happened today with this letter Johnny found? I guess you know Johnny found this letter and in your backpack. Were you aware of that?
Mm-mm. Honestly, I didn't talk to Johnny very much today.
Okay. Do you recognize this handwriting?
Mm-hmm.
Whose is that?
Tony's.
Okay. George Hernandez, you call him Tony, is that right? That's where everybody calls him Tony. Did you read this letter? Sure.
Believe me, I never had any intention on following through with that. I'm not that stupid.
But do you see the seriousness of this paragraph right here?
Oh, believe me, and when I saw that, it scared the shit out of me.
George directed Angela to deliver the specific letter to a fellow Arlanza gang member. And the letter was very, very detailed about identifying information on 2 witnesses that were going to testify against George Hernandez in his homicide case. And Angela was going to deliver this letter with all this information on these witnesses to a fellow Arlanza gang member so that gang member can kill the witnesses on George Hernandez's case.
So then when Angela Parks comes into the picture, now he's got another avenue to get information in and out, and he uses that. And that was the very first kind of big thing that he asked her to do for him, and when that was pull his mail, deliver his mail outside of the normal process, and that way Shumway wouldn't get a copy of it.
The only time she showed any emotion to me is when they decided to put handcuffs on her. Okay, stand up, turn around, put your hands back. Then she started getting emotional, freaking out. I don't think she knew she was going to get arrested.
My life is basically over. I've come to the conclusion I'm done.
I don't know what George Hernandez offered her. I have no idea. Maybe she was infatuated. I don't know.
Angela did graduate in the top of her class, and she was a bright star who was on her way to a great career. How could she change? How could this happen? I think Angela Parks knew that she was doing something wrong, but I think sometimes people have unresolved issues. 7 months after her parents divorced, her dad passed away. When there's a lot of dysfunction in the home, a lack of connection, what happens is many times people choose to not get too intimate in emotional relationships. So what she was doing slowly was pulling away from him. She gets into the jail and she meets Hernandez. Hernandez was a sociopath. He was a narcissist. So when Angela and George started writing letters together, he starts luring her in. It was easy for her to attach to someone who could not have intimacy with her. When someone is incapable of giving their heart because there's a little pathology and fear of trust going on. And it's easier to reach out to someone who really is unavailable, and you can romanticize that. In the case of Angela Parks, this is possibly what we have.
Angela's case is not an isolated incident. These stories happen all the time.
There was that classic case with correctional officer Joyce Mitchell in New York that came out, where she enabled 2 murderers to escape from prison. And these guys knew just how to play her.
She was sentenced to, I think, 8 or 9 years in prison, and for her last parole hearing, they said, you know, you're not going anywhere, you're staying here. People are fascinated by these stories. I mean, case in point is Lynn Hagen in the UK, who heard about the case and ended up animating Hernandez's drawings and putting them to an opera.
But I'd always been really fascinated by the American justice system. I wrote to a prisoner on death row, that is George Anthony Hernandez. I wondered about the impacts of having this woman betray his trust, you know, and what Tony was to Angela. I mean, he's fairly good looking. Just like most people, you just can't control who you fall in love with.
The next time that he called and wanted to talk to me is when we arrested Angela Parks, and he got wind of that, and it was all over the news.
These are photographs of Angela Parks in court today as she faced arraignment. The 32-year-old Riverside resident left her job as a sheriff's deputy after police got wind of a plot.
Ms. Parks had an inappropriate relationship with one of the inmates and is accused of conspiring with that inmate to solicit the murder of 2 people.
That she wrote down instructions for how to locate planned murder victims. That she took the instructions out of the jail. That she concealed them in her car. That she then transported them to another location. The second felony charge is for allegedly trying to hide the plot so Hernandez would not get caught.
When you arrest a police officer and you're going to book him into jail, they clear the floor. That means there's no trustees that are in custody. There's no extra personnel. There may be 2 deputies there and a supervisor, and that is it. It's like a ghost town.
Angela Parks was booked and incarcerated in the very jail she had been working at that same morning.
Yosh is one of the supervisors. He was standing outside waiting to accept her. Angela Parks saw him, and she started crying because she had to see Yosh, and Yosh had to book her into jail.
When I first heard that she's being booked in, I was really upset. To be honest, I was pissed.
Because of her actions, you know, my family had to have, you know, U.S. Marshals and SWAT members at their house. I had to move and go underground because I had a hit on my life. They wanted me dead. We didn't know how much information was given up at the time from her. But I knew they had Jimmy's pictures of his kids getting his hair cut. They had pictures of Steve Shumway's house, and they also knew where my mom and my dad lived at. And obviously, I was living with Angela, they knew where I lived. These people wanted me dead.
I would have believed that she was talking to Jesus before I thought she was talking to any gang member.
I never believed they were genuinely in love. I read all the letters. They were saccharine, sweet. You're my Valentine. I love you, I love you, I love you. I want to spend my life with you, all that stuff. I think they were genuinely infatuated. I think that they were genuinely intrigued by the forbidden nature of it. If you read the letters as I had, you almost got the sense that it was like this game that she was playing, but it was anything but a game.
Angela told me she was sorry for what she did. Angela said, I don't blame you for being angry at me. And to see somebody with a bright career ahead of them do something stupid, it just hurts, you know. And sometimes I get emotional about it, only because I thought she had a real good career and she was family.
To hurt normal people because they're honest and they're going to stand up and do the right thing so that a murderer can get away with it, I mean, I don't know what's worse.
We trusted her, we loved her. She was welcome in our house. And I consider her like my daughter, I really did. She was that close to us, and she chose another route, so that's on her. She loses out.
I have a lot of anger towards Angela because she broke my brother's heart. She broke our hearts. She broke the family's heart.
I got kind of pissed at first when everyone started talking shit about her, about she's back. I was like, wait, this is Angela. We were heading in the right direction. My family loved her. Both of us were going through a lot in our life, and we were able to heal each other. That was the first time in my life I felt complete. And I feel like this is what life's supposed to be about. And for her to like backstab me and hurt me the way she did, doing what she did to my family, is something that's unforgivable. It just screwed me up. It took its toll on me. It took its toll on me, definitely.